Hey guys, welcome back to Ruijie RCNA class. I'm Nick Sha. Today we will talk about NAT. I will use 4 cases to show you how to configure NAT. NAT is a technology to solve the address shortage problems. We can translate a private IPv4 address to public IPv4 address by using NAT. If you want to construct your network, you don't need to change it, just modify the mapping. Here are some NAT terms. We can see this. Here, the local private IP address, we call it inside local. When it translated to a public IP address sent to outside, we call this public IP address inside global. For the internet, if they don't use NAT, both the outside local and the outside global are same. There are some different classification of NAT. Static NAT is a 1-to-1 mapping. Dynamic NAT, we have a public port to translate. And overloading NAT, we share one public IP address to multiple private IP address. Now let us see the case 1. Here we have a PC1 and the gateway is the route 1. Now this is internet. We need to have PC1 translate its private IP address to public IP address, then access internet. First, we need to configure the IP address for them. Then, this is the steps for static NAT. IP address, then IP NAT inside or outside for the interface. Then enable the interface. Create a static NAT entry. If you make any mistake, you can use no to delete the command. Okay, here for the FOO is the inside the interface. We use IP NAT inside. FO1 is the outside interface. We use IP NAT outside. Then we use IP NAT inside. Source static. Pay attention, static. Then the source IP address and the public IP address 1-to-1 translation. We can try to ping it and find it succeed. Now I give you a question. If the internet PC ping this private PC, it should ping the local IP address or global IP address. Okay, the answer is second one. Because NAT is transparent for the outside users. Now let us learn the analysis of static NAT. First, PC1 try to ping the PC3 with its source IP. When route 1 receive it, and it will check the NAT table to translate it. Pay attention, the source translated to a public IP address. For the route PC3, when PC3 replied, it will just reply to the source IP. And the route 1 check the NAT entry, translate it from global to local again, then send it to PC1. Okay, we can find that static NAT can help us, but it wastes the IP address. Now let us learn the case 2. In this case, we have a public port from 100 to 105. We have 5 public IP addresses. This time, please follow these steps. First, we need to configure a ACL. We learned it in last course. And then IP NAT port, the public IP address port, and enable the NAT entry. IP NAT inside source list. Okay, we just say here ACL to match the source PC, which needed to translate, and the NAT pool provide the public IP address. Then IP NAT inside the source list 10 to associate with the ACL, then pool Ruijie to associate with the public pool. Here is the comparison with static NAT. Static is source static. Here, dynamic is source list with the pool. And we can try to pin it. Then use show IP NAT translation. We can find that the two different private IP addresses use two different public IP addresses. Okay, now let us try to learn the analysis of dynamic NAT. If PC1 and PC2, if we only have two public IP addresses, but when they release the IP address, the PC4 can also use the IP address. So we can find that dynamic NAT is more efficient. Here is the working process of dynamic NAT. First, for PC1, send to route 1. Route 1 check the pool and choose one address to translate. Then send the packet with the new source IP address to PC3. PC3 replied. Route 1 will check the entry again, then translate from global to local. Then send to the PC1. For PC2, the same process, but just choose another IP address. Okay. We already learned the static and the dynamic NAT, but sometimes maybe we only have one public IP address, so we can use another technology, overloading NAT. We also call it PAT to address the problem. This time we have PC1 and PC2, but just one public IP address. Here we follow this step. We use IP NAT inside the source list, then with the overload keyword. This keyword will help the device to use the same IP address with different port numbers. Let us say it, IP NAT inside the source list, then we can use the outgoing interface with the keyword overload. Here is the comparison. We can find that the NAPT with the overload keyword. We try to pin and show it. We can find that no matter PC1 or PC2, they translate to the same public IP address, but with different port number. Okay. So NAPT, this technology, in fact, it uses the port number to distinguish the IP address by using the same public IP address. This is the process of NAPT. First, then route 1 check NAT table, translate and forward, reply it, check the table, and translate it to PC1 again. For PC2, also translate to the same public IP address, but with a different port number. Okay, at last, we learn a case 4. This time, we have a R3 device to provide a telnet service for internet. It means we have a PC3 from internet. We need to telnet to R3. Here is a private IP network. So before it, we need to enable the telnet functions. We configure the default route for route 1 and enable the telnet function. Then for NAT, this time we use IP NAT inside source static Because we provide a telnet service, so we use the TCP protocol. Then the source and the source port, pay attention, global address, global port. Okay, here is the comparison. If we want to provide a web service, we can use TCP and port number 80. This is the protocol inside a local address, then local port, global address, global port. We try to telnet and show IP to check it. Okay, so let us have an analysis of port mapping. For the port mapping, normally when we have a server needed to provide service to the internet, port mapping is required. This is a process of port mapping. First, from PC3, send the telnet packet, and router 1 checks the NAT table, translate this time from global to local, and then send back, this time translate from local to global again, then send to PC3. Okay, now let us have a summary. Today we learn NAT. We use 4 cases to show the static NAT, dynamic NAT, NAPT, and port mapping. I also leave you some exercise. Please read and answer it. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time.